This is Back of the Net and Beyond. Today I'm going to be speaking to Stuart Robson, who's a former speedway racer. How's it going, Stuart? You okay?
Yeah, all good at the moment, thanks. Yes, Danny, yeah, really good, thanks.
Good stuff. And how's life treating you at the moment?
At the moment, yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. I'm back in work after, like with a bit of this lockdown initially, and then because I work on building sites, so
Okay.
I kind of had to go off site for a little bit, and then I'm back on the sites. So yeah, all good. I had to get a job at delivery driving for Tesco. Actually, it's where because I'm still self-employed.
Yeah.
Needed to do something quick, and we did that for about 4 months.
Okay. That's good. And how did you find that? Obviously, I'm assuming you did that because the lockdown situation and kind of your situation in terms of being self-employed as well. So how did you find that process?
I actually didn't mind it. The job itself was all right. It was nice because there was no traffic on the road. Initially, like literally, I was the only vehicle on the road a lot of the time. It was great. So you just moving around and meeting lots of new people when you're delivering. So you're chatting on to people.
Yeah.
A lot of the elderly people, like you're the only person you see all day.
Yeah.
So having a bit of chat to them, drop the shopping, and it wasn't hard work. It was everything was pre-programmed into the little sat nav you get, and yeah, just that load the vans up. That was about the hardest thing to do. I enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, so I've been speaking to you for what, 30 seconds. So you've shown kind of what your character is to a certain degree to go from obviously being a professional athlete, which we'll touch on shortly, to then be in a situation like all of us where you're in a lockdown situation. And luckily for me, I was fully employed, but not self-employed, full-time employment. And obviously I was put on furlough with kind of maximum pay. So it didn't really affect me from that perspective, aside from the other stuff, which will naturally affect you anyway. But for you being kind of self-employed, it's kind of down to you to find your kind of next source of income, if that makes sense. And for you, you've gone out and kind of you've gone down that route where you thought, well, I need to get some money in, and you've obviously gone down that route where a lot of people would probably turn their nose up at that, especially being a former athlete. So that shows a lot of character. I mean, what was the situation? Did you have to go through an interview process, or were they desperate to get people in? They just said, look, just come in and kind of learn on the job.
Bit of both. I had a couple of interviews, sort of. I think they did a lot of the elimination on the application process.
Right.
And then there was a quick interview, and then a very quick sort of training day, so to speak. And then you learn on the job from then. But it's normally a process that takes at least 2 to 3 weeks, I think, or maybe longer. And we did it in a day. So, but I think the guys who they chose, both males and females, they weren't looking for anyone in particular, just looking for people who they thought they were pretty good, I think, with their choice. Yeah. And everyone who they chose most of the people seemed to last quite a while in there until they got back to their own job or whatever. Maybe they found something else. But yeah, I was one of the last in from the group that started with me, which was a week after initial lockdown. I started, so I got the job quite quick.
Yeah.
And I think I went on for. I only stopped about 2 weekends ago. That was my last week, because I ended up just doing weekends. With me getting back on site, on the building sites, I was working midweek, like Monday to Friday them, and then I was doing Saturdays and Sundays at Tesco's.
Right.
Only doing 4 hours each day, so I wasn't doing full days.
Okay.
But I hung on to it just in case everything went pear-shaped again. Like no one knew what was going to happen, did they? So, if there was another lockdown or the sites closed for whatever reason, then I would have had to get off and find work again. And I needed an income because I've still got a mortgage and I've still got bills to pay, and my daughter goes to nursery, and we've still got to eat and everything else. So
that's massive, and I mean, a huge congratulations goes out to you for obviously for doing that. And I'm supposing that it kind of made it a bit easier because you enjoyed actually doing it.
Yes, it did. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, with doing the racing I did, I was driving all the time. So driving around didn't bother me. Like driving the vans, obviously that's what I drive a van as my everyday vehicle anyway.
Right.
So it was just, yeah, it didn't bother me one little bit. It was, like I say, it wasn't hard work. It was the most physical part of the job was putting the trays on and off the van. So that was it. They've got to, I don't know what the maximum weight was, but none of them were that heavy, you know, that you couldn't lift them. So yeah, it was good. It was, especially, like I said, especially while the roads were so quiet, it was great.
Yeah.
I love driving around like that. It was, like I said, the only vehicle on the road a lot of times, and it was brilliant. And the weather was beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah, the first few weeks of lockdown, I think we all got blessed with the weather that we had. So yeah, we were lucky from that perspective anyway. That's great. I mean, brilliant that you've done that, and that again shows character. And this is one of the things that I keep trying to tell athletes and former athletes. Sometimes you're not always going to be able to have that lifestyle that you may have had beforehand. Whether you're kind of coming from the higher echelons of your chosen field, or even maybe you're like towards the lower end of your chosen field, there's always a kind of certain lifestyle attached to elements of certain sports, especially football and rugby and tennis and things like that. So again, for you to step away from that, and obviously we knew, well, you just mentioned that you had a job already on a self-employed basis, but then you've had to step away from that and maybe go into something kind of out of your comfort zone. So that's a massive kind of like step, and it shows that you've got character and resilience to do that. But yeah, I'm going to touch on kind of what you're actually doing now a bit later, if that's okay. You mentioned that you're actually working on a building site, which is great, and I don't think I've spoken to someone who's actually done that whilst I've been doing the podcast anyway. But in terms of your career, Speedway, first guest on that I've had from a Speedway kind of sporting world anyway. I know nothing about Speedway, so you're going to have to like strip it back to basics because I want to know as much as possible. So just tell us a little bit about Speedway if possible.
Right, Speedway is on an oval dirt track. There's four guys in a race at any one time, no more than that in the UK. And we do 4-lap race from a standing start. So we have the starting gate where there's tapes go across in front of you. As the tapes rise, you drop the clutch and off you go, and you've got 4 laps to win the race. It's a team sport in the UK, and it's relatively popular. The popularity has dropped over the years. But back in the sort of 70s and 80s, when I was too young to be racing then, it was more so the 70s. It was very popular. There was some big names around in the sport, and it was very popular then. But it's dropped off quite a lot, really. We're lucky to get 1,000 people to a lot of meetings these days.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still going. It's a good sport to do. It's good fun. There's a good social side to it. Well, there's a serious side to it as well, obviously, because it is professional sport. And it is a team event. So there's teams up and down the country. Obviously, every team has their home track, and every team goes to the away tracks, just the same as football, you know, and rugby, same sort of thing. And the leagues run in the same sort of way. I think it was like 3 points to win a meeting for your league table, and none for if you lose, obviously, and I think it's 1 point for a draw. I think that's what it is. I can't remember now because I've been out of it a couple of years now. I don't know. I don't know if they've changed things, you see. But as far as the racing itself goes, the race, 4 rides in the race, like I said, 4 laps. First rider gets 3 points, second rider 2, third rider 1. If you finish at the back, 0 points. And the way it works, as far as payment goes, is you get paid per point you score.
Okay.
So it's performance-related pay. And if you don't score any points, you really don't get paid. So quite a difficult one. But with it being a team event, you've got two riders from each team in any one race at a time. And if you and your teammate finish first and second consecutively, the guy finishing second gets what's called a bonus point. So you will get paid for 3 points. You know, so you're not racing against your teammate. You know, it gives you incentive to ride together.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, same if you finish second and third as well. But if you finish third and fourth, that's it. You get 1 point for third and 0 for last still.
Wow. I suppose then there's a lot of pressure. I mean, in sport, especially professional sport, there's naturally that element of pressure anyway. But I suppose I always talk about football just because I'm obviously from a football background. But yes, it's a team game, and yes, obviously you want your own personal success. But at the end of the month, you're always going to get paid unless the club's in financial difficulty or whatever. But with speedway, it sounds like you could do all the groundwork, all the training. You obviously got to pay for all your gear and stuff, and then you race, and then you come last, and you don't get any financial reward for it. So in some ways, you can end up in financial difficulty, negative equity. I don't know what you really call it in your terms, but I mean that must be really difficult to deal with. I don't know if you've ever come across that situation yourself.
Yeah. Yes, I have. Yeah, because it's like then obviously injuries is part and parcel of it. So there's at least a couple of times I can remember going to Edinburgh. I live in the Midlands now. I'm from Sunderland originally.
Yeah.
But I live in the Midlands, have done for quite a long time. But we'll drive all the way to Edinburgh, and or I've done one or two tracks. You go out in your first race, you have a crash, not necessarily your own fault. It might be another rider made a mistake, clipped you. Yeah. Nothing intentional, but just one of them things. What happens? You're out injured. You've done one lap maybe. You don't score any points.
Yeah.
And you've got a bent bike, and maybe your helmet's broke, so that needs replacing, and you've got to replace part of your bike, and then you can't take your place in the rest of the meeting because you're injured. That's it. You've done something. You've driven for 7 hours to get there. Got injured, earned no money. It's cost you a lot of money to be there because you have to pay a mechanic.
Yeah.
Obviously, you pay your fuel, etc., and the running costs of the van, and and you got a 7-hour drive home.
Jesus. So I'm thinking. I mean, obviously the long journey home, that'll be a nightmare anyway. I've had a few of those myself, but different circumstances, as I mentioned. So I'm just thinking, kind of in the short term, essentially, if your kind of financial background you haven't got like sound financial backing to a certain degree, and you lose 3 or 4 races on a bounce, that can more or less, I don't know if I'm being over drastic, can that more or less end your career, essentially?
No, not really, not end your career. It'll just it gives you a bad night, really. That's all it is. Right. You've got to just put it behind you, and then you go to the next meeting, and then you start again. But you basically haven't earned anything that meeting.
Yeah.
You might get a guarantee. You might have a minimum earning guarantee, so at least it covers your fuel costs and your maybe some a little bit more of your costs towards your costs for going. But not everyone gets that. Right. Generally, only the more successful riders might get that, or guys who've been around a bit longer, more experienced, because they know what to ask for in the deal. Not everyone gets it. So sometimes you will literally go and get nothing. So
Jesus. I mean, so like, how does it work from like an athlete's point of view? I know you said like you're in a team situation, but is there like a lot of funding that's needed, sponsorship and things like that?
Yes, yeah, very much so, because obviously the motorbikes, they need a lot of upkeep. So the engines are highly tuned, and they've got to be serviced. I used to get my engine serviced every 25 races.
Okay.
And each race lasts approximately 1 minute.
Wow.
So you literally about 25 minutes use out of an engine before it needs a service. And services can cost upwards to £1,000. Generally it's a couple of £100 minimum, upwards to about £1,000 for a service, depending on what needs doing. If it's a major service, sometimes if you need new piston and a new rod and things like that, you're talking £1,000 plus. It's not cheap. So there's a lot of upkeep there. There's the general maintenance of the bike itself. So clutch plates, we run dry clutches. We don't run clutches in oil like what a road bike would or a motocross bike.
Okay.
Clutches are ran dry and they wear quite quickly.
Right.
You're forever changing clutch plates. and you've got 7 clutch plates, you've got fiber plates, and you've got an alloy plate in between the fibers. So the fiber plates range from something like probably around about £15 each. I can't remember exactly, £10 to £15 each, upwards to about £40 each. And the alloys, I think the probably is around about the £40 each mark now.
Jeez.
So you're changing them pretty regular.
Yeah.
Things like tires, cables, handle grips, things. It all mounts up as far as the maintenance of the bike goes. But you're not just running one bike. You run a minimum of 2 bikes.
Okay.
And my last season I was running 2 bikes and I think 4 engines.
Okay.
So, but when I was sort of at my prime as such, which was a few years back now, when I got to the top of my level I got to, I was running something like 4 bikes and 8 engines.
Jesus.
So, to buy a bike now is probably around about £10,000.
So it's definitely an expensive sport. I know at the top I mentioned that I don't really know much about it, which is true, but I'm just recollecting when I was kind of down south, when I was living in Bournemouth, and we actually went to a track. I don't know if it was actually, well, it must have been obviously in and around Bournemouth, but I don't know exactly where it was. Yeah, and I remember a few of my teammates at the time saying, "Oh, like we've been here before, and it's great." And I was like, well, "I've only kind of seen it a couple of times on TV." This is going back, I don't know, 2002. Literally, I went and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, it's really noisy, and it's just they're so fast. And obviously, like you said, the race is kind of, you start and then it's over before you kind of realised. It's like, I can't really explain it and give it justice at the same time. It's one of those things where kind of as a spectator, you probably have to go and actually see it physically. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And obviously the whole thing, like we had hospitality as well. So we had the food and whatever else. And we were there for like a few hours and just, it was really, really good. Never seen anything like it, to be honest. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Poole have been one of the top teams in the what was the top league for quite a long time. They've won the league quite a lot of times, and the promotion down there have been very successful. And they've been very good at what they do. They've always put good teams together, and there's been some really good meetings. And I used to ride a lot for Coventry. And there was always major rivalry between Coventry and Poole. There was some really, really good meetings there, and so it was quite a few times we've been there, and results have gone both ways. They've been down there and won, been down there and lost, been down there and drawn. They've been to Coventry, done the same, won, lost, draw. It's been good. It's always good rivalry, but it's a friendly rivalry, but it's when you're on the track, you're out there to win. There's no letting up. But off the track, a lot of riders are friends.
Okay.
And always, we all want to race again the next day. So you've got to have respect for your fellow riders.
Yeah, of course.
You can push and push, but then there's always got to be a limit to where you stop pushing, and because it's going to mean injury to another rider. That's the thing. If they end up crashing because of something you did intentionally as well, it's not really good to be like that.
Yeah, of course.
Some people are like that. Most people aren't though.
Yeah. Random question. I heard rumours, obviously, when we were kind of going to attend the race and stuff, and people saying like there's no brakes on the bikes. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I went off there. I've just had a phone call come in. Yeah, that is true. There's no brakes, no gears.
Jesus.
There's a clutch. There's a throttle, and that's it. You drop the clutch and off you go. It's a direct drive, is what I think the term is. 500cc engine. So they're putting out around about 80 horsepower, I think, 80 brake horse, thereabouts, I think. And the bikes only weigh round about 80 kilo. Yeah. So like power to weight ratio, there's they're quick. Yeah, I think they say they do 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. So I mean, you do get off the line pretty sharp. So you've got to be quick with the clutch. You've got to be quick letting it out to get off the start, but you've got to be quick sometimes to pull it back in if the front wheel lifts. To slip it so you don't land on your back, because otherwise you can go off the back extremely, very, very quickly and really easily. So
I just remember them being so rapid. It was just ridiculous. And you just mentioned kind of 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, and that probably sounds about right. But I'm always kind of, so you mentioned there's no brakes, and obviously the bikes are light and they're rapid, and obviously it feels faster just because it's like a singular vehicle as opposed to, say, a car, where you put in the like the vessel of the car. So naturally you feel faster anyway, because you're naturally feeling the wind, obviously the wind speed and things like that. But then what happens when you're approaching the corners? Like, is it just a case of, I don't know what you call it in the terms, like the professional terms, when you lean into the floor, is that kind of how you navigate slowing down and stuff?
Yes, it's all part of it. Yeah, I mean, you'll come into the corners like full gas. You won't shut off. Wow. You just lean the bike over, and it breaks traction. Right. So your back wheel then obviously steps out, and you control your speed with that. So you can either, it depends on the track size and shape and conditions. Yeah. Sometimes you don't need to shut the gas off at all. You can literally hold it on the whole 4 laps. Right. And on the stop. A lot of the times, tracks like Poole, where you went, I assume that's where you went. That's very local to Bournemouth, and there was good hospitality and stuff down there. They you come into the corner on the gas, and as you lean the bike in, the bike breaks traction, you'll ease off a bit, so you slow the back wheel down. And the idea is that you slow the back wheel down, it gets a bit more traction for you, rather than just keeping it spinning too much. So you grip better, you can go faster. It's kind of, it doesn't make sense that you shut the gas off to go faster, but that's what it is. You need to slow the wheel down because it's going to spin too fast otherwise. Okay.
And what's the kind of the average lifespan of a racer?
A lot of guys go, if they start as teenagers, they generally will get early to mid 30s as average. Some go a bit less, some go a bit longer. I was 41, I think, when I retired, so I went a bit longer. I did 26 seasons. Wow. But there's another guy who's recently retired, in American guy, Greg Hancock, 3-time world champion, I think. He was 47-ish when he retired. And he was still at the top of his game as well. He was still on top of the world-class rider at that age.
That's some achievement. I mean, the lifespan there, I was expecting you to say shorter, just based on kind of how intense and kind of the risk of injuries. So I was expecting you to say something more like maybe 8 to 10 years. But it seems a bit longer than that. It's pretty much the same as like football, really. But yeah, where did it all like begin for you? How did it all start for you?
Right, with me, my dad used to ride when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. He did a little bit of what's called second half, and he didn't quite make the main teams a lot. He did and didn't. He would be in and out. Okay. He rode for like 10 years, and I've got an older brother who's 5 years older than me, and he started doing what's called grass track, which is the same as speedway, but on grass rather than being on a shield surface. And he started doing that when he was quite young. 6-year-old is the youngest you can race. Okay. And I was riding bikes from 3-year-old as well, as my brother was. And then when I turned 6, I sort of followed Scott's footsteps and went into the grass track as well. Right. And then did that for a couple of years. We lived in Sunderland then, and it was, most meetings were sort of like miles away, really. They were like in Cheshire and places like that, so they were all miles away. So we did it for a couple of years. Then I had to stop doing it because I couldn't afford to travel anymore. So my dad then bought me a motocross bike. Right. I did a little bit of local schoolboy motocross, which was great fun. Great fun. I did that from about the age of 8 to 14, 15. Okay. Most weekends, and that I did that, and then from about the age of 12 to 14, I would because my brother had then started speedway, because he was 5 years older than me. You could start at 16. I used to go to the tracks with him, and every now and again I'd get a go on his bike after the meeting.
Nice.
Do a few laps, and I kind of, from about the age of 12 to 14, I used to ride his bike, and I got my own bike when I was around about 14, and then I basically stepped away from the motocross and started riding speedway. But just because you can't race, or you couldn't race at that age then, I just used to ride around after the meetings on my own bike, at Berwick and Middlesbrough and Newcastle every week, 3 tracks, because Middlesbrough and Newcastle were very local. My brother used to ride for Berwick at the time, so be able to put the bike in his van, go up, and it was kind of helping me for costs, because he'd be able to get his costs covered with his racing. And I did that, and then when I turned 16, I literally stepped straight into a team at Newcastle, and then off I went, and didn't do very well for my first 3 quarters of the season. I was just learning, and then I started scoring a few points towards the end of that season. This was in like 1993. It's quite a long time ago now. And then the following year, stayed with Newcastle, and similar sort of thing. It didn't have the most successful of seasons. Was doing okay. I picked up a little bit as the season went on. I got a bit better, and then after 1994, I got picked up by Coventry in what was the top league then, and stayed with Coventry for till from 1994 to 2004. So the 10-year.
Wow.
I did it, and then I did do a season at Hull in the meantime, and then went on to another club and went back to Coventry and did quite a few more seasons with them as time went on as well. But then Coventry fortunately closed down. Yeah,
I remember, because obviously I know where, because I'm based in Coventry now. I'm from Leamington, but I live in Coventry. And it's actually it was a previous work colleague. So I've literally just changed jobs in the last couple of weeks, and it was a previous work colleague who told me about yourself. So hence, obviously, why I'm talking to you now. But I remember kind of driving past the speedway. I think was it in the Bindley area, around that way.
Yeah.
I remember. I think I drove past it a few times, and and then obviously it was in the news that obviously they're closing down and things like that, which is a bit sad. It's always sad when you hear kind of things happening, especially when it's kind of in your local kind of community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I mean, so you've obviously had a successful career. I know we touched on injuries before, and I mentioned obviously some of the injuries must be really severe. I know you've had some, just because the person I spoke to put me in touch with yourself, told me that you've had loads of like crazy injuries. So just tell us a bit about those.
All right, yeah, there's been a lot. It's all part and parcel of it. You kind of accept it, but some riders get away with more, get away with less than others do. And I think my first major injury, which was before when I was only 14, actually, I was just I broke my left arm, but I broke it quite badly, and the bone didn't break the skin, but it was sort of poking through a little bit, and a bit of a compound fracture.
Right.
And then so I ended up in hospital with, and then they put a plate in the top part of my left arm, and they put a pin in my elbow to pull that back into place, because the little bit of bone that came off between my elbow and where it broke basically went right on my arm.
Jesus.
So that was the first bone that ever broke. After that, and that was pretty major. But then that was the first one. Then I remember a couple of years later, I had a big crash at Newcastle and fractured my skull. I had a depressed fracture, which was quite a big one. Then from then, broken collarbones, broken ribs, punctured lung twice, broke my back twice, shattered my pelvis, broke my leg, broke my right wrist few years back quite badly. That's given me a stick now. Actually, I've got arthritis in that now because of it.
Really?
Yeah, it gives me a lot of discomfort. That does.
Wow.
But broke my ankle. Fingers are all part and parcel of it. You can break. Sometimes you can continue to ride. I've broke fingers before in hand where I've been able to continue to ride in the meeting.
Right.
I've done it times when there's just no way I could do it. So.
Okay. Wow. So it's safe to say you've had your fair share of kind of injuries from head to toe, really. And I mean, there's injuries in all sports, but I mean, there's obviously some that are kind of really, really severe, and obviously this is one of those. What's your average day for, like your average, well, say professional speedway racer? What is your kind of day-to-day routine?
With me personally, if it was race day, you'd get up, get yourself some breakfast. Try and have a good breakfast. Obviously, you've got to set yourself up for the day as you do in any sport. Depending where the meeting was at, you get the van loaded up, because so long as everything was ready, bikes were ready and everything was prepared ready, you'd get the van loaded up, get everything in order, make sure the van's full of fuel, check things through, make sure you've got everything you need. You know, you always double check, because there's nothing worse than getting to the track and you think, oh no, I've left my fuel can, or I've left, you've left whatever it might be. Yeah. And you think, oh no. But so yeah, you go through all that. A good lunch. Towards the end of my career, I learned a lot more about what to eat and what not to eat. Yeah. So you eat and try and eat correct, and get yourself ready. And then most meetings start around about 7:30, depending which day it's on, which track it's at. So you then want to make sure you're eating at. I would try and make sure I was eating around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, ready again for the race. Right. So depending if you had to travel far, you'd know where you could stop and pick something up that was decent, or you'd prepare something, take it with you. I used to have I still have actually. I've got a microwave in my van because I run an inverter, right. And so I'd be able to take something, reheat it, and eat at the track. So you want to get to the track generally around about 2 hours before the start of the race, or you could get there, eat something. So that's race day. Your non-race day, if it's the day after the meeting, depends if you've got mechanics to clean your bike or not, or if you've got to do it yourself. You get up. If you've got to do it yourself, you get up. You either unload the van if you haven't unloaded the night prior to when you got home. You get everything out ready, get your kit, all your kit in the washing machine, get that washed. And as that's doing, you start then preparing the bikes ready to be cleaned. So you take them apart quite a lot. You take the clutch plates out, you take carburetor off, take the wheels out, take the chains off, take all the covers off, and if you haven't got a hot wash, you've got to degrease all the oil off the bike, and then use your cold one. And if you've got a hot wash, look, I had a hot wash, I had a steam cleaner, so wasn't bad. That would take all the oil off. So you'd then clean everything down. You can do a bike, if you really push it, you can do a bike in about 3 to 4 hours, start to finish, on a good run. If ideally you want to spend a bit of time, because you got to check the bike over all the time, because things break, things crack, things come loose. So you're forever checking things over, and you want to. Everyone likes their bikes to look good, so you try and polish them up a little bit. You get them looking as good as you can get them. Generally, you take around about half a day if you're not rushing to do each bike. So that's sort of pre-race day, post-race day. You got a day off, you get your training done in the meantime. When you got your days off, you get to the gym, you go for a run, you go for a bike ride, you ride a motocross bike, whatever you do for your training. Some guys do gym work, like HIIT training. I used to do that. Some guys do mountain biking, some do a bit of motocross, some just go for runs, some don't do anything, because once you race fit, you're racing so regular, you keep your fitness up a lot, like quite well, because you might be racing 2, 3, 4 times a week, every, especially the guys who ride abroad. They'll be in Poland one day, Sweden another day, in the UK 2 days after that, or Denmark in the meantime, Germany. They're literally here, there, and everywhere within Europe. So some guys are literally were riding 5, 6 days a week, or even every day. Sometimes they go for like 3-week periods without a break. Literally have meetings every night in different. So them guys probably wouldn't get a chance to do any kind of training.
Right.
So, but like I said, they wouldn't need to. They'd be on the bike every night.
Okay.
So,
and what about yourself? When you were kind of racing, did you get the opportunity to go and race abroad at all, or were you just kind of UK based?
I was mainly UK based for most of my career. I did do a little bit in Sweden for a Swedish club. I did a little bit in Poland for a Polish club. Not a lot, because I had a big crash and broke my back on one of the second meet. I think the second or third meeting out there for them. Right. And I never went back. I did do other meetings in Poland, but not really team stuff. I did a little bit of German league, not much, and a little bit of Danish league. Again, not a lot, but yeah, it was. I did a bit, not as much as what I would have liked. So I did manage to get the odd individual meeting abroad, like whether it maybe in Czech, and I did a couple in Germany. I did when I was doing the under-21 World Championships. I would do that. I got with Poland a couple of times doing that. I was in Germany doing that. Doing general World Championship qualifiers. The Italy. I did a little bit of Italian league at one stage as well. That was good fun. Some stuff in meetings in Sweden. I raced in Sweden for a Norwegian club actually at one point as well. Now I think about it.
Nice.
So I did do a lot of traveling. I was quite lucky.
Yeah.
Some guys do a lot more. Some guys do a lot less. And so I managed to do a little bit of racing in America, which was great.
Right.
Really good. And New Zealand, did a little bit in New Zealand as well.
Brilliant. So you're really well travelled then.
Yes, I've travelled a lot more than most people do. But as far as speedway goes, a lot of guys travel a lot more than me. But yeah, I've managed to see the world, and I've sort of got paid for most of it. Not necessarily get paid very well, but I got paid a little bit. Yeah. And I enjoyed it. It's good fun. And I met a lot of people. I've got friends in Australia. I've got friends in New Zealand, America. Everywhere really. It's good. It's good to get back in touch with everyone now and again.
Brilliant. And obviously, you hear athletes talking, or former athletes, and they talk about kind of missing what they were doing before. So whether it be tennis, rugby, speedway, football, and they talk about elements of kind of, I miss the dressing room banter, or I miss performing on a day-to-day basis, or whatever it may be. Me personally, I don't miss playing football. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on what you're currently doing at this present time in your life. But what's the situation for you? Do you miss racing at all, or not?
I don't miss racing speedway personally. I don't get much chance to go and watch it. Well, there's not this year. There's been hardly anything on anyway. But last year I didn't get much chance to go and watch it. I don't live too far from Coventry Speedway, so that is my local club, or was my local club. If Coventry had been running, I would have been there every week last year. Okay. But because it wasn't running, I've not really got the incentive to go at the moment. I do keep in touch with a few people, and if I will go again and watch. But I don't miss the riding side of it. No, I'd kind of got to the stage where I wasn't enjoying it. Okay. And I'd done so long, and I'd had a really good time for a long time. My last couple of seasons weren't the most successful, and the incentive, the will to win, the desire, that killer instinct you need. Yeah. It just it went. The enthusiasm, my enthusiasm. That's the word. It went. My enthusiasm for racing, but I managed to luckily get through my last 2 seasons injury free. And weren't the most successful personally or club wise, but I've managed to step away from it. In the meantime, I do still ride a bit of motocross and enduro, so I still like riding bikes, and I do enjoy the odd race now and again on that. But when I do that, it's fun. There's no pressure.
Yeah.
It's just, if I want to stop, I can stop. If I want to keep going, I keep going. You know, I can ride to whatever effort level I would like to do. And whereas in speedway, if you're not giving 100% because it's your job, you shouldn't be doing it. You have to. I
suppose that's the case for kind of, I'd say, all, if not most sports anyway. If you kind of don't enjoy what you're doing, or if you can't perform at the level where you think you should be performing at, for whatever reason, whether it be injury or kind of your mental state or whatever, then it's probably time to get out or maybe seek help. You kind of answered my question there, because I was going to ask you about kind of when you thought it was time for you to retire, and you've obviously answered that in detail there anyway. But in terms of your transition away from speedway to working now on a building site, how did you find that process, or was there something in between? Because I don't know if you kind of went straight from there to the building site, or you kind of crossroads for a few months or maybe a couple of years or whatever. Like, what was the whole process for you?
Well, a couple of years back, I was, I think, late 20s, early 30s, maybe thereabouts. I can't remember exactly. I thought, I've got to learn something for when I retire. So I've got to do something. What do I like doing? And I had a bit of a thing about it. And I did a plumbing course. And went to college in Coventry and I only managed to get the first year in because the second year's on site and you need a job. I couldn't get a job. I was still racing at the particular time when I was doing my college course. I was actually racing in Swedish League, so I was flying out to Sweden most weeks as well. So I was having to have days off that, and it didn't really affect my learning on the side of things, but it affected my attendance initially at the beginning until the season finished. Once the season had finished, I was 100% attendance, but I did that, and I passed the first year. I got that, so I'm sort of half qualified in plumbing, doing water and waste. But I can still do things like that, but I don't really enjoy it. What I preferred to do was I always preferred working with wood, doing joinery stuff. So I've been interested in that for a long time. I do a little bits and bobs of that now and again, but one day moved into the house I'm in now. One of my neighbours came around just chatting. How you getting on? You know, I have a general background and what you do for work, and it's just general chat. And you went on, and he says, "Oh, if you ever need any work, come and see us. Well, I can get you in." So we started. He's a painter. He was, and he do painting on building sites, like commercial side of things, sites, not domestic stuff.
Right.
And I started doing that with him. I did that for quite a few years, actually, on and off. When I was too busy with the racing, I would stick to the racing. And then either if I had a bit of a quiet lull period, I'd go back and I'd do a bit with him, or the winter time, if I wasn't going abroad anywhere for the winter, I'd work. And I did that, and I stuck with that for quite a long time. So while doing that, I've met other people along the way.
Right.
And I now work self-employed still for a fire protection company, a subcontract. And so again on commercial sites, so big warehouse style buildings, like places like Amazon and Nestle and things like that. They do all the fire protection, so they spray the steel work with the intumescent paint. Then it's got to be, most of the time now, 9 times out of 10, it's got to be top coated a different color to what the intumescent is. So you've got to do that. So I'll be doing that. There's lots of what's called hole stopping, where you've got there's firewalls between the office sides of the warehouse and what there is in the warehouse. There has to be a firewall, and there has to be no gaps. because if there's a fire in the warehouse, it can't draw air in from another room, and each room has to be airtight to a degree. So again, like I say, if there's a fire, it can't draw oxygen from another part of the building. So you've got to do all the hole stop, and you find the holes where the cable trays have gone through, or air conditioning ducting, or water pipes, anything. So you've got to block all them up with the special like the fireproof stuff.
Okay.
So I kind of do a bit of that. I don't do the spraying of the actual intumescent paint. I put the top coat on. So I still do a lot of painting now, but I do the other bits of the other elements to the fire stopping as well, which is good. I enjoy it, but it's good. I work on my own most of the time, which I've always done anyway. So I'm used to that. And I just go up, I turn up, I do my job, and I come home. It's good.
That's amazing. And you've gone kind of from one end of the scale to a complete opposite, and that's more or less what I've done. I'm working with property now, so completely different to football or sport in general. So how did you find the transition moving away? Like,
well, because I'd been doing it for a while, it wasn't so bad. Once I'd finished with it, I could step straight into what I was doing. But obviously I missed the lifestyle because it's a great lifestyle, and you know, it's an evening job, so you're not having to get up. Now I get up at 5 o'clock every morning, whereas then I would get up maybe between 7 and 9 o'clock, depending if I'd been racing the night before or whatever, if I had stuff to do. So you could kind of get up when you want, so to speak. You had the day to yourself. You had time to do what you wanted. If I wanted to wash my van, I'd go and wash my van. If I wanted to go to the gym, I'd go to the gym. You know, go and do some housework or do whatever. Now I just haven't got time to do anything. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I have something to eat, I have a shower, and I go to bed.
Jeez.
And that's it.
No, I mean, it's really commendable that you've obviously done what you've done in speedway, and then you've obviously found a successful career in obviously what you're doing at the moment. What's your actual title in terms of what you're doing at the moment?
I don't really know, to be honest. I have to fill forms out now and again. When you go on site, on your site, you have your induction, you fill the forms out, and it actually says job title. I always leave it blank. I don't actually know. I don't know if you're just supposed to put fire protection or what. I don't really know, to be honest.
Wow, that's amazing. And in terms of your kind of transferable skills, because I generally ask this question to people that I speak to, what are your transferable skills that you brought from Speedway to obviously do what you're doing now?
Well, working with my hands is what when in the bike preparation, everything has always been working with your hands. So you're doing things, you're thinking about what you're doing. So that kind of stuff, you know, if there's a bit of a technical thing you need to do on site, or if it's difficult to do for whatever reason, you've got to stop. You think about things. You think, how can you do all that? So taking a step back and thinking about things is part of it all. Just generally working with my hands, really, and being practical. I've always been a practical person. Academically, I wasn't too bad. I didn't get too bad a results at school. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I was kind of mid-range. But if it was practical side of things, like physical things, like sports at school, I was great at. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But that was, again, like being practical, doing stuff. So that's all transferred over into what I do now, because I'm on the go all day, on my feet all day, every day. And that's it, really. It's I do have to manage myself, which I've always had to do for the racing, which is probably a really good thing, actually, because I have to plan things and work out all my do all my own invoicing and that sort of side of things as well, which I did have to do for racing at one stage. So I had to learn all that. But yeah, managing myself in general is all part of it, because with the speedway, you're planning 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance for engine tuning and things like that, you know. So you're looking at your fixtures so far in advance to plan ahead and get things in place. If you needed the hotel room, you'd get your hotel sorted out. If you know, depending, because sometimes you might be like, we do what we call northern tours. We'd be maybe Workington one night, Glasgow the next night, and Edinburgh, or it'd be Workington. Hang on, I'm trying to think what days each club ran on. Workington usually on a Saturday. Edinburgh would be a Friday.
Yeah.
So you might do Middlesbrough or Redcar on a Thursday, Edinburgh on a Friday. Yeah. Then you might do Workington on a Saturday and Glasgow on a Sunday. So you might do a 4-day run. You might do them 2 days at a time, and do the Friday and Saturday. And then a couple of weeks later, go and do the Saturday and Sunday, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So again, like all that side of things, planning, management in general, really. Okay. It's all a big part of it.
That's great. And obviously, just going back slightly, you mentioned that you kind of took it off your own back, whereby you thought, well, I need to do something else. You need to learn another skill or another trade, and you obviously went off and sourced the opportunity at, I think you said it was Coventry Uni, where you were doing the plumbing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that shows obviously great self-awareness and character in itself. But aside from that, did you get any help? Because in football terms, we have the PFA, which do a great job. And sometimes they get a bit of slack just because people think that more needs to be done. I do think more needs to be done, but they do a great job. And they generally help players who are current players and also former players as well, with kind of anything. I don't know if you've got the same kind of remit within the speedway circuit. If not, did you get help from anyone else, like people who you may have met or come across during your career, or kind of, I don't know if you did source any help at all?
No, there's nothing. Once you retire, you retire. Some guys can get a job within the sport.
Yeah.
Whether it be like team management or even just mechanic and helping riders out. It's most just walk away from it. You stop and that's it. You walk away, which is what I did. Obviously, you make a lot of contacts within the sport over your career. So them contacts do come in handy now and again, and they still do. Not so much for work, but for things outside of work. Like for my racing, some of my sponsors still help me.
Okay.
Which is really good. I ride a bit of enduro and a bit of motocross.
Yeah.
Just for fun, but obviously I still need all the equipment. I still need a bike. I still need tires. I still need helmets, gloves, goggles, etc., etc. So I'm quite lucky in that respect that I've got a really good sponsor still up in the Newcastle area. A company called STS, and they're called Straightforward Tire Service is what they are, and they specialise in alloy wheels for vans.
Okay.
And they do tires for car vans as well. But they also have a motocross shop on the side of the tires things, and they run that as a part of the business as well.
Okay.
And that's the side of it that always helped me, and they still do. With if I need some goggles, if I ring them, or some boots or whatever, he still sometimes gives me stuff for free.
Yeah.
If not, he would do me a very good price, which is, I mean, he doesn't need to do any of this. It's just the goodness, you know, the guy likes me, obviously, I assume, so, which is good. Yeah. He's still really good to me, they are, and I like to keep in touch. He actually, I kind of class him as a friend anyhow. He's a nice guy, and I keep in touch, and that's been a good thing. But as far as work goes, there's nothing really links back to my work as far as racing. It's just, but I still have contacts, like I say, for things I might want if I need a van or whatever it might be. There's still contacts within the sport that I could approach. Yeah. And it would generally help me in that side of things.
Okay. Coming from a more broader kind of angle now, more of a generic question in terms of sport in general. Do you think more needs to be done for athletes when it comes to approaching retirement or at the start of your career, and kind of maybe implementing things where you can maybe learn another trade or another skill? Because I think more needs to be done, to be honest, because I hear so many people kind of scared of retirement and don't want to talk about it, or the approach to retirement is always seen as a negative, or more often than not, it is anyway. Athletes retire and then they don't know what they're doing afterwards, and they end up in a situation where kind of their kind of description is losing their identity. And obviously you've heard the stories on the news, and there's various different strands and facets and reasons why this can happen. But I think it can be eradicated slightly if there's more help or more understanding throughout your career, rather than just maybe giving someone some information when it's kind of too late, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, it would be good. It certainly would have helped me if I could have had some kind of help. I can see at the start of your career, you should be encouraged to whether to be study or to get some kind of trade, or whatever, like, so you've got something behind you in case your racing career doesn't work, because not everyone's at any sporting career. If you not every sporting career works, and probably maybe it's like 90% of people who try to go into a sporting career probably don't make it, and the 10% who are lucky enough that do, sometimes you can make enough money that you can retire off. In speedway, it's a bit more difficult to do that. Some guys do. Literally a handful would do that, though not many, and they'd be the world-class guys. But in the UK, I think it should be more encouraged. And then they can stay at the end of the career. What do? Unless you've got in your own mind, you know what you're doing. So I know guys who don't do anything. They don't know what to do because they can't do anything. So, but I know in Denmark, certainly a lot of the Danish riders, before they start riding abroad and whatnot, they'll study till they're like 18 or 20 or whatever sort of age, and they'll get some kind of trade behind them, whether it be in engineering or whatever it might be. So they've always got that to fall back on, and they can do that when they retire. But, should be definitely more encouraged.
Definitely. I mean, I agree with what you're saying there. You touched on Denmark, and I think that's just a Scandinavian kind of train of thought anyway. So I had a period of time in Iceland. I was playing football over there, and all the players I played with, they all either knew a trade or they were teachers in schools or whatever. So football didn't work out, which invariably it was working out because they were playing at a decent professional level over there. But if it didn't, or when it came to retirement, straight into a job, because they're already doing it whilst they're playing anyway. So I don't know why that can't be implemented over here. I understand obviously the Premier League and maybe the Championship, it's a different scenario because the money's kind of sky high, but kind of certainly League One, League Two and below, it should just be like in America, whereby you go to college and you need to get decent grades and show that your obviously attendance is high in order for you to perform, whether it be American football or soccer as they call it, or hockey or whatever. And that's been going on from day dot, from what I can remember. So it's certainly, with the infrastructure in the UK and the financial backing that we've got here across the board for most sports, I'd say it should be implemented. I think anyway, but it's easier said than done. I mean, I obviously don't know the kind of the financial kind of parameters behind it all, but surely people have spoken about this who are kind of more powerful than me, but it still doesn't seem to be the case where it hasn't come to fruition yet anyway. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming in and obviously speaking to me today. Really enjoyed the chat, and you've given us an insight into what it's like to be a speedway racer. And obviously appreciate that you've transitioned away from that and now doing something completely different, which is great. So if you want to just let everyone know kind of again where we can find you personally on social media, and also the name of the company that you're working for, and where we can obviously find that company if need be, because there could be someone out there who wants to use your services.
Yeah. Well, me personally, it's just my name. It's just Stuart Robson. I'm on Facebook. I think I'm Robo186 on Twitter. I can't remember now. It's been that long since I sort of said anything like that now. I might be Stuart Robson on Twitter as well. And I'm on Instagram. It might be Instagram that I'm Robo186 on. I can't remember. That's they're all just personal accounts. They're not like racing accounts or anything like that. But yeah, the company I'm working with is called GA Fire Protection Limited. They do the fire protection on warehouse and large buildings. It's based in Market Harbour and Cambridge. There's 2 offices, so
Right.
yeah, quite decent enough company to work for. I enjoy working for them, and yeah, it's all good.
Brilliant, good stuff. Like I said, appreciate you coming on. Enjoyed the chat, and obviously keep doing what you're doing. And hope things go well for you going forward.
Thanks, mate. Thanks. I enjoyed the chat too, and thanks for contacting me. It's been quite interesting and quite good to speak to you.
No problem. See you soon. Speak soon.
Cheers, Danny. Thanks, mate. Bye now.
Bye bye.